Hey there my darlings, how's it going? My name is Craig and welcome to a Bujin deck profile. So the reason I'm doing this deck profile is because, as you all know, Ties of the Brethren recently came out in the TCG, in Yugi's Legendary Decks 2, which works really well with Bujins. It really helps boost the potentness of the deck, it gets them started really quickly, and it just makes them so much more viable competitive-wise. And I recently came to the conclusion that I'm very happy with my current build of Bujins, including Ties of the Brethren. So that's why I want to give you guys this deck profile. I really hope you will enjoy it. As always, we're going to run through the main ratios of the deck profile, then we're going to get to the explanation segment where I explain as much as I can. So for the monsters, to start with, of course, we have 3 Bujin Yamato, the main monster of the main deck. Then we have 2 Mikazuchi, 2 Harume, and 1 Adasuda, so that's it for the Beast Warrior Bujins. Then for the Bujingis, or Bujingais as some people like to call them, we have 3 Crane, 2 Hare, 2 Turtle, and 1 Centipede. That's it for all the Bujin monsters, and then for the last few monsters we have 2 Honest, because everything is a light monster, and finally 2 Maxis for draw power. For the spells, we of course have the brand new Ties of the Brethren at 3, 2 Fire Formation Tenkies, 2 Bujin Carnations, 1 Twin Twisters, and finally 1 Upstart to round off the spells. Moving on to the traps, we have 3 Quaking Mirror Force, 1 Torrential Tribute, 1 Vanity's Emptiness. For the Solemn lineup, I have 2 Strikes and a Warning. And finally, to finish off the traps, I have 3 different flavors of Trap Hole, the Time Space, the Void, and the Bottomless. So that's it for the main deck. Let's go ahead and do the extra deck. Starting with the main guy of the extra deck, 3 Bujinte Susanoo, 1 Kagasuchi, 1 Tsukuyomi, 1 Tiger King, 1 Diamond Dire, and 1 Castell. The reason I'm clumping all of these together is because these are all viable targets that you can Xyz summon after using a Bujin Carnation. Then for the generics, I have 1 Rafflesia, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Honor Arc, the Utopia lineup with Utopia, Prime, and Lightning, and finally, Utopic Future to round off the extra deck. So let's move on to the explanation segment. Okay, so the first thing I want to go over is why I'm only running 1 Adasuda. I just feel comfortable with it. I know a lot of people have bumped Adasuda up to 2 since Ties of the Brethren has come out, but personally, I just don't feel that necessary. In order for your Bujin Beast Warriors to be dead targets for the Ties, you would have to draw your Adasuda and 2 Mikazuchi, or Adasuda and 3 Yamato, which is just very unrealistic. If it ever does happen, that's incredibly unlucky, but it hasn't happened to me yet in the 150 games or so I've played with the deck, including Ties. So I'm very happy with running Adasuda at 1. I just don't feel the need to bump it up to 2, because I really don't want to see this guy in my hand to start with. Another quick thing I want to note is that I do love Bujingi Quailin, but I had to cut him due to having to find space for the Maxis. I just need to dig for that Ties as quick as possible to get my combo started, so I had to find space, and Quailin was just the only thing I was really willing to cut. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and explain what Ties of the Brethren does for this deck and why it is so good. So let's say we start with Yamato and Ties of the Brethren. So we can normal summon this Yamato and activate Ties of the Brethren, paying 2,000 life points to target Yamato. What this does is it lets us summon 2 other monsters from our deck with a level, attribute, and type equal to Yamato's, but with different names from each other and Yamato. So what that lets us do, it lets us special summon Adasuda and Mikazuchi from our main deck. Having all 3 of these out basically means that in the end phase we're going to get Yamato's effect. We can bring a Bujingi to hand and have it sent from hand to grave, so we can bring a Hare to our hand and have that sent from hand to grave. That then kicks off Mikazuchi's effect, letting us search a Bujin spell or trap in our end phase for Bujin Carnation. And then finally we get Adasuda's effect, allowing us to draw 1 card and then send 1 card from our hand to grave. So if we have any spare Bujingis, we can put those in the grave, or we can just try to, you know, draw dead cards off the top of our deck, or pitch dead cards in our hand and draw useful ones, etc. So having those 3 in end phase is a really great way to get your deck started, and Ties of the Brethren just really boosts the potentness of this deck early game. The reason I don't run a 3rd Tenki and I only run 2, you don't need the 3rd Tenki in my opinion, because you have the Ties as ways to get Yamato now. The reason you ran 3 of these before is because you really wanted to see Yamato. But with Ties in the deck, that's another way to see Yamato. So in the grand scheme of things, you haven't really gone negative in terms of ways of seeing Yamato. So that's the reason I cut Tenki down to 2. I just didn't feel like I needed 3, and I had to make space for other stuff. Upstart is Upstart, because dig for Ties, damn it. The reason I'm only running the 2 Bujin Carnations, let me grab the second one. Most people who run the Ties of the Brethren build don't run a lot of trap cards, if any at all. I still run quite a few trap cards, so I don't really need the 3rd Bujin Carnation because my entire deck isn't based on just monster plays. I also have a lot of interruption in the deck, so I personally don't feel like I need a 3rd. I've never really been in a situation, except maybe a top decking situation, where I feel like I need a 3rd. In terms of the trap lineup, there's not a whole lot to really say about it. I of course have the 3 different trap holes for Rafflesia targets. If anyone is also wondering why I run the 3 Quaking Mirror Force, Susanoo can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, so it pretty much takes care of anything your opponent's going to have flipped into defense because of this, and it's a really nice card that has great synergy with the deck. Also, if you want to tech in Horn of the Phantom Beast, you can flip your opponent's monsters down with this, equip Horn of the Phantom Beast to Susanoo. Every single time you're going to run over one of your opponent's monsters with the Susanoo equipped with the Horn of the Phantom Beast, you're going to get a draw. So flipping your opponent's board down with this, bringing out a Susanoo, putting Horn of the Phantom Beast on him, you get maybe 3 or 4 draws, which is absolutely amazing, as well as clearing off their board. So this card has great synergy with the deck. That's kind of it for all the explaining in the main deck. Extra deck wise, I don't feel like there's really much to explain. Rafflesia, of course, is great. I generally tend to bring it out mid-game. Once you've kind of searched out your 2 Bujin Carnations, you don't need to Mikazuchi out anymore. So making this with the Adasuda and Mikazuchi, if you've had a turn with the 3 out in end phase and they survive, it puts on good defense and it keeps your opponent at bay. That's kind of about it in terms of explaining. I don't run the Amaterasu because you just don't really make it. You feel like it would be more viable with the ties now, but at the same time, it's just kind of a waste to overlay him into Amaterasu. Amaterasu is a great card, but at the moment, until we get the Bujin Pendulum Hiroko, I'm not sure what it's going to be called in the TCG, we don't really need the Amaterasu. It just kind of takes up a space in the extra deck. Never really going to summon it, but yeah, everything else is kind of standard. I still like running on Arak, but you don't have to. I mean, if you really want to run something else, you can. But yeah, that's kind of all the explaining. A very short deck profile, I know, but I don't know what else to really say, so let's go ahead and move on to a couple of test hands, and then we'll be finished. 4 and 5. Alright, so this is our starting hand. Alright, so not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. Actually pretty decent. Obviously going to summon the Adasuda and use the Ties of the Brethren on the Adasuda. So we're going to special out, well, both of them are right on the bottom waiting. So push summon out the Mikazuchi and the Yamato, which is pretty baller. So we have a pretty decent setup there. Not going to shuffle too much because we have the end phase to do our stuffing. Going to set the Quaking. End phase, now it's actually really good that we have the hair here, because what we can now do is we can obviously go Yamato's effect. I'm actually going to grab a turtle to hand and have the turtle go from hand to grave. Then we're going to get Mikazuchi's effect, so we can search for a Bujin Carnation. And then with the Adasuda's effect, we're going to draw 1 card, then send 1 card from our hand to grave. So because we have the hair, we already have the card that we're going to pitch. So we can keep whatever we draw, and we get a hair and turtle in grave for protection. So certainly not a bad hand. So draw. We get an Honest off of Adasuda's effect, which is pretty fucking good, actually. And pitching the hair. So that's actually a really solid start. We have the maxis to get draws if our opponent tries to get past our board. We have the Quaking. If they make a big board and they don't get rid of the back row, we can flip all their shit face down. We have the Honest, so we can protect these in terms of if they ever get into a battle. And we have the Hair and Turtle, so we have protection from multiple different things. Bujin Carnation, we have a play for next turn. So really good, actually, like genuinely good starting hand. I would prefer a slightly different back row personally, but the Maxi, the Honest, the Hair and Turtle Engrave, the 3 on board, you know, the fact that we have a back row and a Bujin Carnation for next turn, all of that's a really solid setup and certainly a great start. We have a Turtle, a Yamato, a Centipede, a Void Trap Hole, and an Honest. It's alright. Not the best thing in the world. I mean, it's pretty simplistic. Like, it's not a terrible hand by any stretch, because, you know, we have protection for Yamato, and we have interruption with the trap card. You know, we have the Honest, so we can go Yamato's effect and end phase. You can search the hair here if you want, but since we already have Turtle and Centipede, what I'm going to do is, just in case Yamato gets destroyed at any point, I'm going to search out, if I can find Mikazuchi, just so if he does get destroyed, we can replace him. You could also search Hirume if you want, actually. Either would be fairly valid, just so you have a potential Xyz play for next turn. So not the worst hand ever. Like I said, we have the Void for interruption, we have the Honest to keep him alive, we have the Turtle to protect from targeting, and we have the Mikazuchi to replace him if he gets destroyed. So, certainly not the worst hand in the world. Guess we can see what we draw for next turn. Bujin Carnation. I believe I shuffled, right? Pretty sure I shuffled. So yeah, we would draw Bujin Carnation, which isn't bad at all. Still playable, still had some protection. It's kind of hard to show you test hands with Bujins, because Bujins aren't really kind of a make a big board kind of deck. They make a good board with good protection and a little bit of interruption, and then they start making their power plays kind of mid to late game. So it's kind of hard to really show you what the deck can do through test hands, but I would recommend you try out the deck on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro if you have Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro installed. It's very fun, it's really enjoyable to play. One thing I didn't show you, by the way, is that if you have Ties of the Brethren and one of the Bujingis, one of the beasts, you can actually play the Ties on the beast ones, so you can actually special out 2 other level 4 light beasts, which we have. So Ties can actually also be used on these guys, and I mean, if they die, it loads up your graveyard. If they survive, you have an Xyz play. So Ties is never really going to be dead in the deck. Even if you've used it once or twice, the other copies are still going to be live with something in the deck. Anyway, that's the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really do love Bujins. I play them for such a long time now, and I've just never really mentioned it too much on the channel, but yeah, I fucking adore Bujins. I mean, really fun deck. They have a lot of aspects to them, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and if you have any recommendations on what you would change or what you think maybe I could change and try out on the deck, please let me know in the comments. I love discussing things with you guys. As always, take care and duel on.